All right, here we are, Awesemo NFL Live before lock. It is your old pal EMac. I am joined by Kyle Dvorchak, and we're going to break down Monday Night Football here for you. Hopefully you guys tuned into last night's show and took some of the head-to-head contests I dropped in there. 3 of you beat me, 17 of you didn't. Ran a train, had some trouble with lineup issues. It was nice. A lot of Rex Burkhead went to bed before the 2 touchdowns he caught. It was lit, as the kids say. Won about $1,500. Kyle, it was a good day. It was a good day. I'm up about $4,000 now since sports returned, so I'm very happy. I was pissy last night, but I'm happy now. What do you got going on? How was your weekend?
Well, it was not the best DFS weekend. I was actually doing all right until that final, the final 2 scores. I think it was a Stephon Diggs score. Cole Beasley topped 100 yards. And then obviously the big nuke Hail Mary all kind of occurred at the end of as games were wrapping up. Not much else happened in the rest of the games. So I, like the big galaxy wrinkly brain I am, faded that game. And I felt decent about it until those last, 100-yard bonus and 2 scores. But that's the nature of the game. I definitely am not like, oh, the people who played them just got lucky. No, it turns out that like the last 5 minutes of Kyler versus like Josh Allen are just as lit as we expected them to be. No regrets on my process, not lamenting the people who played it as well.
Yeah. So onward. I guess one more game to wrap up. Technically, this is not the next week. And then we've got next week we have Thanksgiving, one of the larger slates, right up there with NBA Christmas. So it'll be a good time. We will have plenty of content for all of that. And of course, we're doing the Awesemo strategy shows starting each and every morning, including Saturdays. You can check all of those out on our YouTube channel. We are turning all of those into podcasts available on any podcast provider that you can think of. All right. There were no notable inactives, so no surprises there. But David Montgomery, we'll talk about that in just a sec. Mitch Trubisky and Irv Smith and Tajay Sharp were the main guys who were out from skill positions. Allen Robinson, Cole Kmet, and Lamar Miller are all playing. Lamar Miller is going to be the question on everybody's mind, Kyle. So let's just start there. No David Montgomery, still in the concussion protocol. Obviously, Tariq Cohen on the injured list as well. So we are left with Ryan Nall, Lamar Miller, and the rookie
Artavis Pierce,
17
probably?
snaps or something like that. Yeah, Pierce. Oh, Cordarrelle Patterson.
Yeah.
I still want to count him as a receiver return man. I don't really think of him as a running back.
Dude, he's a running back. He even worked out with, I believe they said in the offseason he was working out with the running backs. I'm sure he got other training camp reps and all these other reps with the, the special teams units, the receivers. But they've been using him probably more so as a running back than he is at any other point except for a stretch of like 2, maybe, if only maybe 1 game with New England where their entire backfield was decimated. So he's been getting some run. It's obviously not a lot, but he's getting, I'd say, like backup running back level duties of running back. And he's always been kind of good in that role. He's been incredibly efficient on a limited sample of kind of gimmicky work, which maybe that inflates, his yards per carry, which is kind of a garbage stat anyways. But I've always thought he could be a decent runner. He's like one of the best kick returners in the history of the NFL, basically. He's like incredibly efficient at that. He's not a bad receiver. He's an okay receiver, I'm sure. And his history as a running back, at least as like the very limited role he played, has generally been efficient. So I kind of think that, I don't know if we see a ton of him tonight at running back. I still think we could see some Ryan Nall. We could see some Lamar Miller. Artavis Pierce probably ends up as the odd man out. But I wouldn't be shocked to see him play a Tariq Cohen-like role now, especially when you saw the bigger games of Tariq Cohen as a runner. I think that could be his ceiling. So I'm excited for Cordarrelle Patterson. I know like our projections update throughout the day, but he was projected as one of our better values, at least in the morning. I'm assuming that hasn't changed. And I kind of like him. Maybe I'm just a sucker for these like gimmick players of these Percy Harvins and Curtis Samuels. Maybe I'm just like a sucker for that. I'm not seeing clearly, but our projections like him. I like his style, so I'm inclined to get a little bit exposure to him tonight.
So we needed to hit that at the top because that's going to be where everybody is peppering their questions. We're going to go by team, by position here. We'll give a full breakdown at the end to answer some questions. I want to remind you all of a couple fun things tonight. We have some free content available for you. I will drop the link into chat as the Awesemo Showdown rankings. So that is something that is helpful. We also have a giveaway. Check out the pinned tweet on Awesemo.com to enter the Thursday Night Football giveaway and win a year of Awesemo Plus NFL. All you got to do is follow the instructions on the graphic and predict whether Kirk Cousins or Nick Foles throws for more yards tonight. The random winner who gets the question correct will get 1 full year of Awesemo Premium. You can also check out on Instagram, that's Awesemo_COM, to win a free month of Awesemo Plus. All right, there we go. So Minnesota Vikings at the top. They are favored by 3.5, depending on which site you are looking at. That's nothing to sneeze at, but it's kind of, to me, that's sort of in the pick'em range because we don't really have home field per se. And we have learned this year that actually having fans is a big difference maker. It's kind of a case study. We saw it in the NBA bubble, especially during the playoffs. We're seeing it in the NFL as well. But we have Kirk Cousins, who has the 3rd lowest fantasy projection in the entire week of all quarterbacks, according to Awesemo. I want to set the stage here. He is one of 2 starting quarterbacks tonight, which is important. But Chicago has the 4th best passing DVOA. They, of course, have Eddie Jackson and Kyle Fuller in there. I think Jimmy Smith is doubtful, if I remember correctly. I didn't double check that one. But nonetheless, they still have a really, really good secondary. They have allowed multiple passing touchdowns in each of their last 3 games. 2 apiece. However, 10 on the year, pretty low. Only 3, no quarterbacks have topped 300 yards. Stafford at 297, Breeze at 280, and Tom Brady at 253 are the only ones to pass 250 yards. Why do I mention all of this? Because it's going to be hard as hell for Cousins to do anything, considering he has topped 27 pass attempts 2 times this season. 2 times.
Boy.
I'm going to quote a movie. 2 Utah, give me 2. Do you know that movie?
That
came out before you were born.
Do you have Keanu Reeves in it?
Yes, it does.
Is it the one where, is it the Replacements or whatever?
Close. He is playing a quarterback. However, he plays Johnny Utah, not Shane Falco. And that is, now and I'm blanking on it, the name of the movie. Crap, how can I forget it? Anyway,
I'm shocked I even
got correct me on that. Now I'm suddenly going blank, remembering my meltdown from last night. But we're not going to go there. So talk to me here about the quarterbacks. We've got. I don't know what to do with Kirk Cousins. We're looking at about 90%, 95% for Dalvin Cook. Here's your differentiation play. He's not the guy I want to differentiate with. Am I shooting myself in the foot?
Yeah. So I think
Point break. Thank you. I started thinking The Replacements. My favorite quote from that movie. I've seen monkey shit fights at the zoo that were more organized than this. Like to break that one out every now and then. Quarterback, the floor is yours.
Yeah, man, this is a very tale of 2 teams lineup at quarterback, because you have the Bears, who are passing at a league high rate, and it's been good enough to get Nick Foles a handful of touchdowns. I think he scored in almost every one of his games. And on the other side, you have a quarterback in Kirk Cousins, who is barely used, has 34 pass attempts in his past 2 games. Would you say 27 was the mark that he hadn't topped outside of 2 games in any game? So they are right now, I believe, 30th in pass percentage. And when they are winning, which they've been doing a bit more recently, they started off the year truly abysmally and then kind of got better as the season went on. When they are tied or winning in an individual game, they're passing on whatever I have it cited as the other way. They are running on 58% of their plays. That's passing on 42% of their plays. They simply just don't want to use Kirk Cousins. And honestly, when you have Dalvin Cook, can you blame them? I get why the way Dalvin Cook is playing, they are not passing the football a lot. I think the reason you would look to a Kirk Cousins, and obviously you'd be stacking him with, a Jefferson and Kyle Rudolph, whatever you want to do, would simply be the differentiation play, because it is so negatively correlated, his pass attempts to the overall production of Dalvin Cook. I don't even think you have to guarantee that you don't play them in the same lineup, because we know Cook has crazy run after the catch production potential. At least he has like a few games of like 40 yards, has a long touchdown reception. However, they are seemingly quite negatively correlated. I think in the largest field tournaments, simply put, like if you want to lose money on most weeks but make a ton of money on the weeks it hits, you could absolutely go Justin Jefferson at captain, Kirk Cousins and Kyle Rudolph. You could probably even play Kirk at captain if he spreads the ball out around a lot. Although they don't quite have, the tight end depth, the receiver depth to really do that. It would need to be like a 5 for 80 and a touchdown from Jefferson and a 5 for 50 and a touchdown from Thielen. So I prefer playing the receivers at captain. And if I'm just looking to play a quarterback in flex, simply the passing volume that we're going to see from Nick Foles is enough to give him a clear advantage over Kirk Cousins. And I believe right now, let me check. Yeah, Kirk Cousins is actually more expensive too. So Simply put, it is just you're not going to get enough passing volume from Kirk Cousins to make him a median projection good play at flex. That's okay, though. Like, we can have weird game scripts, and he could make a solid leverage play. You just understand that that's what you're getting into when you play a Cousins over a Foles.
All right, so I see the question right here. Hey, guess what? EMac is fading Dalvin Cook too much or too extreme. The Chicago D is not horrible. No, they are not. They have, let's see, the 7th best DVOA. Only Ronald Jones with 106 yards, Adrian Peterson back in, I think that was week 1 with 93, and Todd Gurley with 80 have more than 70 rushing yards against them. The one thing about Cook, though, is he's getting a boatload of touches. He is averaging almost 24 carries per game, 3.5 targets. He has topped 130 rushing yards in I believe it was 4 of his last 5 games. I don't want to fade him. I guess my version of fading him is going to be playing him in the flex spot. DraftKings did a really, really good job of putting the price up there, which would have been a challenge until Lamar Miller popped up into our lives. We would be talking a little bit more about guys like Chad Beebe and some of these other discount dandies. We've got a potential running back in there that's going to split the workload is our best guess. But I think that we want to I will have Cook in some form or fashion on probably 90 to 95% of my lineups tonight. I don't think that's not a hot take.
He's the best player.
We've seen this with Kamara.
Kamara is the big example.
Yeah, on several slates, and it just this is one of those show that the other guys that your opponents aren't going to play him. And go from there. So within the Showdown slates, there's different strategies among that. But if you're looking at a guy that has that kind of workload, that kind of production, even in the difficult matchup, even if it's a low scoring game, and let's say there's 4 total touchdowns, if he has 1, maybe even 2 of them, he's going to be the dominating scorer of the night, as long as those others are spread around. So that's sort of where I'm landing with him. I did not set up any rules to exclude him and Alexander Madison from each other. Alexander Madison has had 10 or more carries in 3 of his last 4 games. Last week, it was a little bit of mop-up duty and stuff, but he was in on 16 snaps, had 12 carries. When they put him in, the point is to give Dalvin Cook a break. Yes, he disappointed us when he got to take over a couple games when Cook was out, or a couple times where he's had an in-game injury, but he's still a solid running back, small sample size, and we've seen what he can do over the years. So I don't dislike him. I'm okay putting them both in the same lineup, because who the heck are we going to turn to after that? Is there anything you want to add for the Minnesota side? Any game theory? Any 1-5s, 5-1s with Dalvin Cook?
No, I think Dalvin Cook is sort of an interesting, one, I do think he correlates well with the Vikings defense, which does get to face off against a team that passes the most in the league, but they're not very good at it. We get a decent sack rate and a decent interception rate from Nick Foles, and you multiply that by his volume. I think it's a 2.5% interception rate and a little north of 5% sack rate, if I have those numbers right off the top of the old dome. And that's not crazy numbers by any means, but when you multiply that by him getting potentially upwards of 40 plus attempts per game, that could stack up. And that is really how you see defenses make big, showdown winning plays, whether it be in the flex or even at captain. And I think, Alex might end up having always seems to have some defense at captain, because I think people just underestimate their ceiling, despite obviously their floor is having getting blown out and scoring 1 or 2 points. So I like the correlation you get with a Cook and the Vikings defense. And I don't think the Vikings defense is even that bad of a play on their own right. I just think you even maximize your chances of hitting if one of them goes off by playing both of them together.
All right, fair enough. Yes, we'll stay on topic for the moment. Reminder, we do have sponsorship. It is No House Advantage. What is that? Well, it's exactly what it says. There is no house advantage. Prop betting, normally you're going against the house. They set the line and then dare you to go on one side or the other. Here, we have static lines. We play against each other. Static lines meaning once they've put out their questions or their props into the contest, they will not change them for weather or injury, etc. So sometimes they can get a little bit stale. You can use that to your advantage. You can also use a little bit of game theory in there, but they do have sports up for NFL and PGA. NBA is right around the corner. You're going to want to check that out. If you have not yet signed up, use the promo code Awesemo, and you will get up to $20 matched with your first deposit. Refer a friend, get another $5. How does this work? Well, tonight they have given us, let's see, looks like about 24 questions. And what you do is you select 5 of them. You choose the over or the under on those 5, and then you rank them with confidence, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that is your score, depending on if you get the question right, multiplied by what, or add up whatever your confidence on there. So let's look at a fun one tonight. We have the line for Nick Foles, 271 passing yards. Would you like to go over or under for BDN?
Yeah, so for Nick Foles, I think I'll take the under here. I know I said they pass a lot, but the thing is, he doesn't pass well. He's averaging like just over 6 yards per attempt. And although they do pass a lot, both teams in this game play fairly slow and situation neutral. They are like 26th and 28th, I believe, in situation neutral play rate, or seconds per play. So although they pass a lot, there shouldn't be a ton of plays run in this game. And Nick Foles doesn't pass well. He just doesn't generate a lot of yards on a per attempt basis. So those attempts end up being kind of not wasted, but just less advantageous for him hitting his overs than you would think. So I'll take the under on Foles. And I know our projections kind of like that side too.
Yes, so we're coming in with the 244 yards for his projection. The median outcome is 232. That is one of the better wagers tonight. People don't like to bet the unders on stuff because who wants to root outside of Ben Raza? Who wants to root for chaos? Nobody. I'm going to drop the link into chat. We have free No House Advantage projections. So we've got the question there. We've got their line. We've got our projection, which is just coming straight from Alex's model for the yardage or touchdowns or receptions or whatever it may be. We have the median projection, which means what's coming up most in the simulations. And then it tells you the percentage differences and what the value is. Sometimes numbers are a little tough. It also tells you to bet the over or the under. We make it simple for you. Those are free. Check that out. Again, No House Advantage. All right. I do want to, let's look at the rest of the market. So this is on Odds Shopper. So they have Nick Foles similarly with a 270. So this is your player prop that you can get at Sugar House or DraftKings or William Hill. It's 270 and a half. So very similar to that. Again, we have this set up here via the Awesemo umbrella. It is Odd Shopper at Awesemo. Check that out. You can see 4 different sports books with their wager and the line. This is good for prop bets because you can often find discrepancies, or you can see if somebody's betting, influencing the VIG too high on the over or under. And that is something that you want to take advantage of yourself. If you listen to a lot of bettors and bankroll management specialists, they say you can add up to 5 to 7% on your long-term ROI by appropriately shopping lines. Not a bad way to go.
And I think the props market I wouldn't be surprised if that was even higher on your props ROI, because props, I tend to notice with that, generally you get a fairly like obvious consensus around like actual spreads, over unders, etc. There are some like wild discrepancies in props. Just like, and I think Odd Shopper is like, I literally do use it, but it's a great way to find out which places are like making pretty large swings and how they are juiced, or like the juice between 1 yard difference on a prop really is like the most important thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But check that out. That's completely free, as all sorts of fun stuff to look at there. And the specific game pages are pretty cool to look at as well. Wide receiver here for Minnesota. We have a very narrow player pool. It is Adam Thielen and it is rookie Justin Jefferson. I mean, no Stephon Diggs. Adam Thielen must be racking up the targets like he always does. No, he is not. Volume here scares me a lot because it's non-existent. I'm actually willing to take the discount on both sides to Justin Jefferson and have no qualms about it. Chad Beebe's the only other guy who's seen a target over the last 2 weeks. He is running in as the wide receiver 3. The key thing to note, Irv Smith Jr. is out. We've known that going into it, but the Vikings run a lot of the 12 personnel or 2 tight end personnel. Odds are they will probably run some more 3 wide receiver stuff. It just makes the most sense now that they're down to just Kyle Rudolph. And we don't really want to dive into Kyle Rudolph, even though in theory he should be getting more targets. Irv Smith really was not a target monster either. How much more is there to go to him? I don't know. He's going to be blocking. Does it hurt him that he's on the field the whole time? We can spin this a variety of different ways. What do you want to do with the Minnesota pass catchers here? Because it's the direct pivot away from Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, if you're playing in those, like, you know, all of the money, half the money goes to first contests, I think that is the strategy, probably the most viable strategy to find a way to build a unique, not only unique, but potentially solo built lineup and have a lot of leverage on the field is make the ugly play and fade Dalvin Cook, or at least, look to get access to the passing game as well. For me, I agree, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, there's essentially no difference in the roles they're playing right now. In basically since I believe it's week 3, we had Justin Jefferson starting. We have had a discrepancy of 4 targets in favor of Thielen, 7 air yards in favor of Jefferson, and I believe 9 routes in favor of Thielen. Those numbers are essentially the same. I wouldn't be splitting hairs, but we can look at the ownership, which at least as of earlier this morning, there wasn't a big discrepancy in how popular either of these guys is going to be. But one of them, Justin Jefferson, is significantly cheaper, lets you do a little more with your lineups. I think, there's not a huge need to save salary on this slate because I think outside of Dalvin Cook, none of the guys, I don't feel like, man, if you don't have Nick Foles tonight, you are just dead in the water. So I think you can still build good lineups by spending up for Thielen. But when I can save the salary and not really pay a significant price in the ownership, that's where I'd go. Kyle Rudolph is fine, I guess. I mean, he could very well take on a lot of that Irv Smith role. That would be a scenario in which you actually do find him to be a great value because he's okay, if Irv Smith was out and he was 3,000, I believe he was 3,600, you would say that's not a horrible price. I'm probably not playing him. If he were to take on 100% of that Irv Smith role, his price would actually be pretty fair. Do I think he does that is the problem. And I don't think he takes on the entire Irv Smith role. I think he is the most likely one to do that. But I do think if we're saying Irv Smith in recent games has gotten 3 to 4 targets per game, I think he mixed in a 5-target game as well. Probably at most 2 of those targets find their way to Kyle Rudolph. We could potentially see it spread out to other, a 3-receiver set would make a lot of sense. Or if they bring in Tyler Conklin or something. So I think it'd be over projecting to just say Kyle Rudolph now absorbs all of the Irv Smith role. He spent more of his time this season as a blocker than as a route runner. So I think he's a fine play. I think you essentially have to correlate him with Kirk Cousins because the only way he gets there is on a touchdown. I don't really see him racking up yards. So assuming that 1 touchdown is enough to get Kirk Cousins into the optimal lineup, it would seem like it's likely, especially based on this game having a relatively low total, that there aren't going to be a ton of blowout performances. So I think he correlates well enough with his quarterback because his touchdown is his only way of getting there. Do I love playing him? No, he's not a core part of my strategy. Jefferson, I think at this point, maybe, again, not a core part because I do think Dalvin Cook is a good play, but Jefferson would be my preferred player out of all of these pass catchers. Even though they should run more 3-receiver sets, I still find myself struggling to even get excited about Chad Beebe.
Yeah, it's lack of volume. Let's see. Amando, this one is for you. I just dropped $21 head-to-heads there for the Showdown slate on DK. Username in the lobby is EMac. Have fun. I will say I ended up doing quite well with my frozen lineup last night. I'm not expecting that to happen again. So team free money is in full effect. Hey, bearded DFS Santa. Ho, ho, ho. Patterson or Anthony Miller? I'm going to go with Anthony Miller personally. I would like to hear what you have to say on that for the super chat for The Game is Rigged.
So I think, all of these kind of depend on what your lineup construction is. I think because we should see more Cordarrelle Patterson as a running back, and his reception should likely be on low ADOT throws, so they don't necessarily correlate that well with the Nick Foles. Kind of just produce a few yards, but mostly eat up plays and act as plus value rushes. I would say if you have Nick Foles, I would give a slight lean to Anthony Miller. Overall, though, I actually kind of like Cordarrelle Patterson. I talked about it before. He's one of our better projected plays. I think the upside for Cordarrelle Patterson is that he takes on a Tariq Cohen plus role in that he is both a good pass catcher and seemingly a good runner, and that Lamar Miller hasn't played since I believe it's the end of 2018. He's been on the practice squad, hasn't gotten any reps this season. So it wouldn't shock me if we see a surprising amount of Cordarrelle Patterson. You could argue the same thing for Ryan Nall, but I think Patterson would be more likely to be the guy because he simply has more run this season than a Ryan Nall. So I like the upside of Patterson more, but I do think correlation matters in your lineups, especially on Showdown. And Anthony Miller would be that guy if, say, he would already lock Nick Foles in.
All right. One, hit that like button for us. I see we have 1,500 viewers. That's really good for a Monday night. Thank you. We appreciate you guys and gals watching the show. And liking it is one way that you can show your appreciation in return. So definitely hit that like button. You can also subscribe. We're on our march to 50,000 subscribers. You got us quickly to 40,000. We're going for that next milestone. I can't even imagine what sort of giveaways we're going to have when we hit that. We might take a little pit stop there at 45,000, but please do hit that subscribe button. You can also hit the notification bell and know anytime that we are going live. You'll definitely want to check that out. We're putting out all sorts of content and basketball right around the corner here. You know you love the strategy shows. You can also get those on the Awesemo Podcast Network. Everything is on the Awesemo Podcast Network with the exception of Live Before Locks. Defense time. They don't still refer to Minnesota as the Purple People Eaters. That was a long, long time ago. That was when I was just a wee lad. But they have been they've been adequate. Chicago kind of been bad. They passed so much, like you mentioned, but you've got 3 sacks in 4 of their last 5 games, at least 3 sacks. Mitch Trubisky, he's not on the horizon. Played 1 snap in the last 6 weeks. Designed rushing play out of the shotgun. He gained 3 yards, hurt his shoulder. So it's going to be BDN back there. We got to remember, outside of that Super Bowl run, he's just been a very pedestrian quarterback.
Yeah.
He holds the ball. I know it's football talk. He holds the ball a little too long. There's a reason he has played for like 25 teams. He is a journeyman for a reason. Yes, he is one of the best at his craft, but amongst the other guys, he's pretty mediocre. So I'm actually okay with the Minnesota defense. You did mention the correlation with Cook. Anything else you would like to add and lead us in with Nick Foles?
Yeah, on the other side of the ball, I don't particularly love the Bears defense, although I think they're probably a better overall unit. They certainly have more talent to be a better unit, I believe. But I think when you look
you just said unit and you're talking about BDN. Come on.
Not talking about him yet. I'm still talking about the Bears defense. The Bears defense, I think they're probably more talented, but if they're not going to face a ton of dropbacks, I don't think it really matters, because that's where you find ceiling games, is a 4-sack fumble recovery game. That's where you find like interceptions and stuff. That's what I'm looking for when I play a defense. And although I may believe that one defense is objectively more talented than another, simply put, I'm looking for opportunities. And I don't think, if Vegas is even close, I don't think we are going to get an opportunity-laden game for this Bears defense. In terms of Nick Foles, I think he's fine. He's like you said, he's a journeyman. There's a reason he doesn't ever stick with the team. There's a reason, his contract was just dumped to the Bears, who somehow paid for that. There's a reason he hasn't played multiple seasons with the team in a long time. It's probably because he's not that good, and his yards per attempt this season hasn't been that good. He's thrown an interception in almost all of his games. I like attacking him, so I think he's fine to play. I think it'd be even interesting to play him in the same lineup as the Vikings defense, because getting there on volume alone certainly is in the range of outcomes. A 45 attempt game where he goes for 250, a touchdown and an interception, that could put him in the optimal lineup, and it could put the Vikings defense in the optimal lineup. And I only say that because I think it would be a very unique build. I think people who are building lineups by hand, and maybe even if they set the rules in an optimizer this way, don't understand that although those two are negatively correlated in some sense, there's a lot of randomness that happens. So I'm looking for, in smaller field tournaments, your 100-mans, even up to 1,000, a few thousand, I'm looking more focusing on just building good lineups that I don't think are the chalkiest of the chalk. If anyone is playing in the largest of the large field tournaments, I think it's okay to find some negative correlation, like some modest negative correlation, because people generally shy away from that. And doing so will make you unique as long as there are paths for it to hit. And I do think there are paths for it to hit, simply given Nick Foles has like 50 plus attempt upside. So I don't love Nick Foles. I think he's fine. He probably plays well in this game script in the sense of his team is trailing. They should throw a lot. And he's cheap for a quarterback, or at least cheaper quarterback on this slate. Do I think he's very good? No, probably not.
All right, 30 minutes until lock. Remember, I still have a few more head-to-head sitting out there on the DK lobby for $1. Username EMac. We'll have some fun with that. Quickly talk about the groups I have set in Fantasy Cruncher. It's the optimizer I prefer to use, but you can set up similar groups in your optimizers of choice. I have the Chicago running backs. I am only playing one no matter what. Minnesota wide receivers and tight ends not named Jefferson or Thielen. I am only playing one no matter what. Kickers and defense, I put everybody in a group, including captains. I will play up to 2. The BDN group is all of the Bears receivers with Foles I am going to play 2 is my rule for that one. For Cousins, I've got him with all of his receivers. I am only going to play 1 with Cousins. I just don't see the volume being there to support it. However, I did not include Dalvin Cook in that. If I was going to include Dalvin Cook in that, I would set the rule at 2, so it's kind of pointless because he's going to be the guy that comes in on a lot of those. So I'm just focusing on 1. And then I set all my captain receivers and bumped their corresponding flex quarterback with a 25% increase in production, just to give him a little bit of a chance to end up in that lineup. But I'm not setting anything hard and fast because this feels like a game that could be a bit of a slogfest.
Yeah, I think all of those make sense. I didn't hear anything that stuck out to me. I think maybe in the largest field tournaments you could. Did you say you just grouped? Who did you group with Cousins? You limited to 1. Would you play, say, Cousins, Jefferson, and Rudolph? Or like, I don't know, if you're playing in the largest tournaments, would you consider playing, Cousins, Thielen, Beebe, just on the off chance that it is a flipping of the Vegas script, and it doesn't take a lot for a Beebe or a Rudolph to pay off 1 touchdown should do it, and then Jefferson can get there. I agree, though. I don't know if I'd go as far as to double the receivers, but would you play cheap receiving option plus Jefferson plus Cousins?
Yes. So I said a minimum. I didn't say a just 1. So okay. If it comes in there, then I'll allow it.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Try to play about 100 lineups or so tonight, but it's more of a, instead of forcing minimum of 2 like we do on a lot of the quarterbacks, I'm just going with 1. I just don't see the likelihood of the upside. If somebody lands in there because of randomness or other things, salary, sure, no problem. Just be ready to take that goose egg. All right, on to, let me get back to my notes page here. No, we're going to do the running backs. So Miller was signed to the Bears practice squad at the beginning of October. He has not played. He did not play at all last year. Was hurt in the preseason ACL injury. This is going to be his first in-game action, but he has been with the team and he's been practicing and all of that. We have Ryan Nall. We don't have a huge sample size for him. He is priced like kind of a mid-tier running back, but we don't know what we're going to get. And then we have Cordarrelle Patterson, who's wide receiver. Doesn't really matter on the single games, but he is wide receiver still for the Monday to Thursday slates, which I find him kind of interesting there as a super salary saver. I think he's like 3,800 on DK. How are you shaking this out? I've seen a few people say, hey, should I just, one of the questions was Miller captain on FanDuel? No. What's a realistic line for Miller? 10 touches, 12 touches?
I would say that might cap out at what I think that he gets. And not only is it that I think he's probably perfectly healthy. He's had like a year and a half or something to get healthy. He's been on the practice squad practicing for a while. So I don't think it's even his health. It's simply that he hasn't had any run with the starters up until this point. He was just brought up from the practice squad. He doesn't have any in-game reps with either his team or any team in the past year and a half. And they do have other running backs who have played ahead of him. If they actually wanted to give him more work than Ryan Nall, he probably would have been ahead of Ryan Nall in previous weeks. So I'm looking at more of the 4 to 8 touch range. Do I think Ryan Nall completely plays over him? I don't think so. I think maybe he plays over or a Tavis Pierce or something. But also, this team doesn't run a lot. Like I said, they are number 1 in the NFL in pass play percentage, and they also play fairly slow when the game is in a neutral script. The spread being only 3.5 would seem to indicate that this game will be largely a close contest. So if you get a close contest, the Bears generally play slow and they always pass a lot. For that reason, I don't think any of these running backs have a ton of appeal. The only reason we're talking about Lamar Miller specifically is that, do I think he splits close to 50-50 work with a Ryan Nall? Sure, close enough. I can definitely imagine that. And Lamar Miller is super cheap. He definitely does not come into that tier of you play him at captain and you can play whoever else you want. I think the only situations that we've even come close to that, and I don't think it ended up being the optimal lineup anyways, was Deebo Samuel. They just didn't price him up after he came off IR. And Tyler Johnson got in as the number 3 and potentially number 2 receiver versus the Bears in week 4 or 5. Neither of those guys made the optimal captain lineup anyways, specifically because their ceilings were capped. They're role players, and you need a true stud player, regardless of what position, as quarterback, running back, or the greatest kicker games ever, a Ryan Suckup from a few weeks ago. You need to put up a lot of points to make the captain. So I think people can kind of get too cute by playing a good points per dollar play at $200 or $1,000 at captain. Simply put, typically the optimal lineup looks like a mix of mid-range guys and a mid to expensive guy at captain, because those are the guys that score the most. Lamar Miller is not going to score the most points in this slate. He probably won't even score top 5 or 6. I think the best argument for him is simply that like he is a decent value. I still don't think he's even like a perfect value because like his points per dollar is so much skewed by having a low price. If he gets 4 points, it looks good on like a spreadsheet. It probably doesn't end up making the optimal lineup. So I don't have a ton of love for Lamar Miller, but I do get why you would play him. He does let you do other things, like say playing like Dalvin Cook and Allen Robinson and Nick Foles. So I get that. I just think like, should I play him at captain? No, I would definitely not be doing that. I'd even temper expectations for him versus Orion.
All righty, let's continue along here. FanDuel did add Lamar Miller to the player pool earlier today, 7,500, 200 on DK. It's mostly a pricing thing. He just allows a lot of things to happen, but I think this somewhere in a handful of touches is probably the most realistic outcome. Wide receiver here, quite interesting. So Allen Robinson, phenomenal. Saw some, and I apologize, I didn't save the tweet, but someone said Allen Robinson has not dropped a catchable deep ball in like 60 or 70 opportunities.
Well, he hasn't seen one since like 2016.
No, that also is a bit of a problem. But what's going on here with Darnell Mooney and Anthony Miller? That trio is going to see most of the snaps. But Miller and Mooney have been getting a bunch of targets recently. Javon Wims still out for his second game of his 2-game suspension for punching an opposing player. We should see Ridley, fun name to say 3 times fast. He will be making his appearance in his 5th ever NFL game. Mooney has 24 targets in his last 3. I actually think Miller is a nice discount to Mooney. I'm on the fence because of Lamar Miller in my main lineup. There you go. I'm able to play Robinson if I so choose. Wink, wink, nod, nod. But in all of these other opportunities, I'm desperately, or not desperately, I'm enjoying the savings that Mooney and Miller are providing there to Robinson just because they're about half the price.
Yeah, so I think we have we've talked a lot about Lamar Miller because I think it is like one of the cruxes of the slate, figuring out what happens in the backfield. It's kind of the ambiguous situations. Like, honestly, do you need me to tell you Dalvin Cook is a good play? No, like, you get that Dalvin Cook is a good play, even at his expensive price. He's probably going to score a lot of points, probably going over 100 yards and a touchdown. It's figuring out these ambiguous situations is really where you're going to make your money, or even just leveraging what the field thinks is going to figure out. Like, they think they've figured out these ambiguous situations. If we had a ton of people like locking in Lamar Miller because he is like the optimal, points per dollar play, I would be even more inclined to fade him. It's kind of the same situation with this Bears receiving room. Maybe potentially the move could be, and I know this might sound crazy, like how sure are we that Allen Robinson is going to see the entirety of the receiving work? We've had like pretty interesting Anthony Miller and Darnell Mooney breakouts in the past 3 weeks. Both of them have seen 24 targets, I believe 24 targets apiece in the past 3 games. Weeks 1 through 6 for Allen Robinson, a 35% air yard share, a 29% target share. Past 3 weeks, and it's a small sample, but the past 3 weeks, 23% air yard share and 16% target share. I would say for me, it is Darnell Mooney simply because he has like just as much target volume potentially, but a higher ADOT, these higher leverage throws essentially. So I think both are in play, and I like the savings they both give me. Be really interesting to play like a Nick Foles lineup without him, but like, this is just kind of theory crafting for large field tournaments. Although I don't think even in like, 20 to 30,000, person contests, I don't think it's too off the beating path to get to like a Nick Foles, Darnell Mooney lineup, especially if Darnell Mooney somehow brings in like multiple of his long balls, which like I get Nick Foles not very good at that, but the variance in an NFL slate is high. I like the upside of that variance with the Darnell Mooney.
We just have to look to last night. Who expected Rex Burkhead to have 2 receiving touchdowns? And one of them was not from Cam Newton. That was a nice play. That was a really good play. Got to watch the highlights because I was asleep for that one. Let me see here. Remember when Chicago had like 15 tight ends on their roster? We have Jimmy Graham, 54 targets, second on the team, tied with Mooney. He has 13 targets over the last 2 weeks. All of the other tight ends combined have 1. Cole Kmet dealing with a groin injury. He is active this evening. That kind of moves Demetrius Harris back to an afterthought. I really am not interested in JP Holtz. He doesn't have a target yet this year. Harris has just 14. It looks like it's Jimmy Graham by default. Don't feel great about it. But what What do you want to do with the tight ends here?
Yeah, I don't think I'd get any deeper than Jimmy Graham, and he's priced up, man. Like, I think he's been in the past Showdown slates or even in like full slates, an interesting play, but his price right now, isn't he like 7,600 or something like that? He gets a lot of red zone work, which is nice. I believe he's like top 5 or 10 in red zone targets among tight ends. He's got a decent target share, but all things considered, I think he's simply just a bet on a touchdown. And even then, if he has a low game and still scores that touchdown, he could not make the optimal lineup. I really think his price right now just has me at a point where I think out of all of the Chicago receivers, sure, maybe his touchdown upside is as high as any of them, but do I really need to pay that much more versus an Anthony Miller who, I talked up Darnell Mooney. I think Anthony Miller, a great play at his price too. I'd probably just rather look to those guys, and I'm not really going too much deeper. Like, I don't think you need to get to Cole Kmet. Arguably, you could, keep him in your player pool in like the Millie Maker and large contests. But outside of that, he simply just doesn't see enough work for me to really get excited about him. We even had a few weeks ago a big first drive or half for Cole Kmet, and still didn't make the optimal lineup. He just doesn't see enough work. So Jimmy Graham, overpriced, but I still get why you'd go there. Like, he has multi-touchdown upside, potentially sort of like discount Robert Tonyan or something in that way, where he gets a decent enough red zone role that's in the range of outcomes. But do I want to bet on that with my hard-earned money? Probably not. I think I'd rather fade a Jimmy Graham and look to, a Miller, a Mooney, even like a Patterson that could just steal like low ADOT targets from him.
All right. I guess we better talk defense here as well. The main issue with the let me get to my notes. The main issue with the Bears defense is the Vikings have allowed just 3 sacks in their last 3 games, 1.5 turnovers per game. That's in the middle of the pack. And the Bears, just 9 turnovers this season. They are averaging 2.2 sacks per game. The problem is not enough dropbacks to accumulate these fun fantasy goodness moments. We're seeing rarely over 27 pass attempts by Minnesota per game. All right, so number 1 play is obviously Dalvin Cook, right? No great shakes. We've talked a little bit about how you can avoid him, how you can sort of fade him by not playing him in the captain or MVP spot, but giving that to someone else and keeping him on your lineup. But just from raw projections, he's really, really going to be the main guy. My number 2 play tonight is Nick Foles. I think we're going to see 40 pass attempts. As long as the clock is not moving as quickly as the Vikings would like it, I think we're going to see that. He has, his last six games, he has 39 or more pass attempts. Lamar Miller is my number 4 guy. It's only DK, and it's only because he's $200. If he was $1,000, not really interested. Rather look to other guys. And then Allen Robinson I have in the top 4. Which is kind of interesting, especially when you look at his price. But again, that's a function of getting Lamar Miller so cheaply. On FanDuel, I would strongly consider Anthony Miller or Darnell Mooney for the salary savings. When would you put Mooney into captain? How many lineups would you need to be playing? At least 10, 7, 5?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think it would probably come into the range of like a 20 lineup set on DraftKings specifically. I'm not sure I'd be doing too much crazy stuff on FanDuel, specifically because like quarterback and running back are just kind of disproportionately favored on FanDuel. So in terms of the MVP on FanDuel, it's pretty clearly, I think it's weird for the Chicago running backs. There's not an obvious one. And the one that I like the most, Cordell Patterson, still figures to be at best in the mix as a runner. I'm more excited for him as a potential pass catcher because we saw a lot of work for David Montgomery as a pass catcher. I think he should take on that role more than anything. It doesn't help me as much on FanDuel. So I think it is a pretty high tier of Dalvin Cook at 1. There's no one close. Nick Foles at 2, and I think maybe as a contrarian play, or even just if he scores 1 or 2 of the touchdowns, Kirk Cousins at 3. I think my approach on FanDuel is simply probably play Dalvin Cook and look to get weird elsewhere. I think maybe running with a pretty heavy Vikings lineup could even be the approach, that they just fire on all cylinders. So on DraftKings, Yeah, 20 lineups I think would be a fair number for me to get Mooney and captain. I like his big play upside. I simply think that it's still difficult to see him post a massive game because of the market share numbers of Allen Robinson on the season. I know I cited the past few weeks we've seen less work for Robinson. Our prior should still be that he should be the number one alpha receiver. So if I'm ranking the top guys, even on DraftKings, still very much Dalvin Cook. After that, I give a slight lean towards Robinson over Foles, although I get, going the other way as well now that especially he has other pass catchers who can help break up. Like in weeks like 2 and 3, I would have said if Nick Foles goes for 300 yards, we're getting 150 from Allen Robinson. I don't think that is necessarily the case anymore, which is why I think Foles and Robinson are very close at 2 and 3. I don't even think Kirk Cousins is like 4 for me. I think I'd probably rather play Justin Jefferson. Probably even Adam Thielen too, because I think those two guys have enough market share numbers in their own right that if Kirk Cousins goes off, it's probably a big game from one of them, sort of like we've seen with, say, the Tampa Bay receivers in past weeks, so like the Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones splits. So I would say Kirk Cousins is maybe like my number 5 potentially favorite play, captain or not. After that, I think our only discrepancy really comes at I'm just not as sold on Lamar Miller, but I get why you play him at the price. And also if you're playing in very small fields, you can just play the rest of the good plays, which is totally fine approach too.
Yeah, and that's the key thing for me is majority of my contests are 500 people or less. So when I do the showdown, it's just my preferred format, and it makes it a little easier to stay with some of the safer plays. But the other thing, and I learned this a lot from baseball, you then need to build things out a little bit crazy. Not stupid, just a little bit crazy in order to maximize your variance, because I like to play the booster contests, which is 40-1 payout. I find that to be a little bit more palatable for me to turn, my quarter into $10, play in a couple hundred of those, and it's worthwhile in my opinion. And it's just more fun to watch the game because you generally have some combination that's going to get there. I ended up with Cousins as 8. I had the kickers in front of him. Everything else was the same. I have Mooney as 9, Adam Thielen as 10, and it's just it's price, the very price sensitive. My middle tier, Cordarrelle Patterson, Ryan Nall, does not have a carry through 4 games. Oh no, he's played 29 snaps, guys. He's going to get first crack at this. Alexander Madison, just because he's going to get close to a dozen opportunities, and then Jimmy Graham, he's a guy in the red zone. After that, everything gets a little dicey. Let's see here. Throw in some questions. We'd like to answer those for you. Premium Slack, of course, gets the first opportunity. And then a reminder, we've got some free content tonight. It is the Awesemo single slate rankings. We'll drop the link in for that. And you can also check out the Awesemo _COM Twitter handle for our free contest tonight. You just need to tell us who is going to throw more passing yards. Is that going to be Nick Foles, or is it going to be Kirk Cousins? And obviously that's 2 choices. The winner will be selected by a random drawing, but the winner will also get 1 full year, 365 calendar days of Awesemo NFL Premium. So not just rest of the season, but you get a year. So check that out. Dropping the link to the free Awesemo. Oh, I see Nightbot beat me to it. Nightbot, you're working too hard on that. All right. Is it possible to play both kickers tonight? Absolutely. I almost thought about relaxing my rule to allowing 3 of those 4 options. I kept it at 2. I felt that maybe getting a lucky touchdown from someone was about the same thing that I would be counting on, from 2 long field goals or a lucky defensive touchdown. So I still kept that rule at 2 max of the kicker and defense units. Let's see. Jefferson at captain.
Yeah, you can play Jefferson at captain. He's sick. I saw someone say they didn't love him because he plays this Deshaun Jackson high variance style. And I think it's probably not a, inaccurate statement. He has a few less targets and more air yards than Adam Thielen in the games that he started. That's good for Showdown, in my opinion, getting that Deshaun Jackson style player. So I think his explosive upside is pretty awesome. We can see it in the air yards. We can see it in the box score. So do I think it is not a incredible probability of hitting? Sure. But those are the type of plays that help you, 1, find leverage on the field, and 2, find unique ways to build tournament lineups. Not only are you just leveraging the Dalvin Cook lineups, but you also just help yourself find solo or close to solo built lineups. So I think Justin Jefferson, a perfectly fine play at captain. You have to know that like you're not going to win this bet a ton. It's simply that when you do win the bet, it pays out disproportionately. And I think Jefferson falls in that tier. I'm not super sold on him because of the way the offense plays, but I get why you would do it.
So people asking about game selection for the showdown slates. I really like 3-mans. I like the head-to-heads. I just, as I mentioned, dropped in a bunch there on DK for you guys to jump in on at the $1 level. I like the 50-50s. I play sparingly in the contests that have more than 500 people. The payout structures are so absurd. I will generally put my quote main lineup in a couple of those, but that's really it for me, unless I have won tickets, which I usually end up doing for the very first contest of the season, where I win a bunch of cheap tickets via baseball. But after that, I really don't play the big contest because they're too top heavy. The other one the other day was that I saw, it wasn't the Millie Maker, but it was 100,000 to first, 1,000 to 10th. Really?
That makes sense.
Really, it can really hurt you. But I do like the 3-mans. Go play them. Pick one where you recognize, or you don't recognize at least one of the names, since everybody has badges now, because we've all been playing for so long. But that's usually what I do, or post some as well. But I like the 3-mans just because I think it's a better way to. It's a better payout than the head-to-heads, and I feel it's about the same odds in Showdown of beating two guys the same as beating one, because there's generally a lot of overlap in the lineups. I found people in the 3-mans don't always use the what I would call the obvious captain play. Mm-hmm. Tonight, that's Cook. We've seen it multiple times with Kamara where people weren't playing him. Who was Thursday's game? Who was I'm blanking on it, but there was one obvious captain play, and 7 of my games, I was the only one that had him at captain. The other guys had him at flex. It was like, why are you not doing that? In any event, it's just kind of fun. I always say this: I wave goodbye to my money on showdown slates and hope some of it comes back. These are the variance is high. You can be winning 10x, and all of a sudden you're not winning anything. It's pretty crazy. All right. Who's the guy you're afraid you're not going to have enough of?
So I think the guy that maybe is one of the more interesting plays on the slate, we haven't talked about him a ton because his role is pretty solidified, would be Alexander Madison. And it's not even that he like I'm saying, well, what if, Dalvin Cook gets hurt? Sure. Like you can throw that what if out. We literally saw it pan out exactly as that happened in, I think it was their game versus Seattle. Alexander Madison had like 100 yards from scrimmage, might have scored or might have not, but he's obviously a great value. I don't even think that's the scenario that has to happen. I think a perfect example of this was Josh Jacobs and Devontae Booker both going off versus Denver yesterday evening, simply because their team covered the spread by a wide margin. They employ a run-heavy approach when they're winning. They were winning, and both of their guys went nuts. Josh Jacobs over 102 scores. Devontae Booker, I think, in the ballpark of 80 yards and 2 scores. We could very much see that in this team where they already have one Dalvin Cook injury this year, and they have a litany of Dalvin Cook injuries in the past. If they are up by 14 points in the fourth quarter, I think we see 2 to 3 drives where Alexander Madison ends up being the number one ball carrier for this team. He's super cheap too. So sure, you absolutely get that, Dalvin Cook injury upside, but I think it's even more than that. I think it's game script potential. It's potential that he even just gets used in 1 or 2 drives throughout the game, and those are the ones he happens to find. Like, Chase Edmonds did this, Kenyon Drake a few times. He finds the touchdown on that drive. So Alexander Madison, I think, is one player who I have more of than the field probably, and I'm still concerned that if he goes off, I won't have enough.
Yeah, so on my disastrous lineup uploads where I did not get my lineups uploaded last night, I went in, I had Cook was in the placeholder lineup. So I've gone in on 10% of those lineups and just put in Madison, just because it's like, yeah, I want to play Cook, but we've seen enough weird stuff happen that could help me. I lucked out and have Rex Burkhead in all those lineups, so I'm off to a nice bit of a head start there. But we'll see what happens on that. All right, now I've got speaking of uploading lineups, that is what I'm doing right now, because we don't want to get caught watching the paint dry, as they said in the movie Hoosiers. Would you have gotten that one?
I would not have gotten that one.
Don't get caught watching the paint dry. It was good. It was a good movie. Let's see here. We got 6 minutes to go. Miller or Patterson? Miller for me, but Kyle is going to give one last shout out to why he appropriately thinks Patterson is a good play. And I think this is an important one to talk about. So I know you've done this. This will be the third time now, but I think with 5 minutes left, this is another good one to talk about.
Sure. Well, I'll throw it out one more time. We saw a ton of receiving work for David Montgomery. Did he capitalize on a lot of it? Of course not. He's David freaking Montgomery. Could Cordell Patterson capitalize on that? Absolutely. Could he capitalize on some of the running work? Sure. Do I think he sees all of the running back touches? No, but like few running backs do. Even Dalvin Cook doesn't. He gives up some work to Alexander Madison. So if I think we get, 30, 40% of the running back carries and most of the running back targets on a very pass-heavy team, I think that's enough for me to be very interested in a Cordell Patterson. And if he scores on a rushing touchdown, that's a touchdown that no one else shares. It's a unique way to acquire touchdowns, essentially. You don't have to worry about playing Nick Foles. And if you roster Allen Robinson, he throws one to Anthony Miller. And despite Nick Foles scoring, it actually doesn't end up benefiting you as much as it benefits the field per se. So I like that upside as well, although I don't project him to get a lion's share of the running back carries. I think his modest carry floor and potentially high carry or target ceiling makes him a very interesting play at his price.
All right. We have Dalvin Cook at 30% captain on DK. I'm going with half tonight. Does this go big or go home time? I don't think it's a bold take. I'm just throwing out different perspectives there. I have him at 34% of the flex from that standpoint. I have a little bit too much Allen Robinson. I'm getting him at 63%. That's basically double the field. I'd rather... so I'm going to change that for these next few lineups I'm going to make, and I'm going to boost the projections there for Mooney and Miller just to balance things out a little bit from that standpoint. We've got 4 minutes to go here. Sway McThunder, great name. That's like it feels like a Boogie Nights name within the movie name. We have a question here, or a statement. He has a funny feeling that Pierce is going to get most of the work tonight.
Dude, if he's right, I'm tracking. I'm coming to the next chat and tracking him down.
So, hey, it's 2020. Literally everything is in play these days here. Any final words of wisdom? We're about 2 minutes out here.
Yeah, I think someone dropped in that, I don't know, I'm not sure if that's what they said exactly, but they were kind of in the same boat as I was on Patterson. They were on that way with, I think, both defenses. I kind of feel that way as well. I know Alex Awesemo Baker himself has kind of hammered this, that people don't appreciate like the almost binary-esque range of outcomes or just the overall upside you get from a defense, even at captain. I know like if you're not playing the milling maker, maybe you're not considering as much, but I do really like the Vikings versus, Nick Foles matchup. Even if I don't think the Vikings defense is that good, like Nick Foles can just hand you interceptions and he could throw a lot, at least, a lot of overall pass attempts tonight. So another play that just like, I'm worried I don't have enough of despite probably being over the field.
All right. This is going to do it. Doing my upload here. What we said biggest fear. What is your biggest victory lap if it comes true?
I mean, it would have to be Cordell Patterson. You could argue Vikings defense as well because it's another one. But like, I think maybe the ambiguity of the Bears backfield would be the victory lap I would take. Like, I have a lot of Dalvin Cook, but like I can't victory lap Dalvin Cook. Everyone's victory lapping Dalvin Cook. So I think it would either be that or like the high leverage play of going like Vikings passing defense, passing attack. Although I do feel that would be kind of obvious as well. It's just do people, do they have the gall to play that?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Still got a lot of Allen Robinson here. I'm going to just let it ride. Plenty of Dalvin Cook. Let's mix these up a little bit. Copy into the file. You got to pre-prepare your files because if you don't, bad things happen when you're trying to do shows. We know all about that from last night. And yikes. My settings were a little restrictive. I'm only going to play 70 lineups tonight, but that will do it. We'll hit the little upload. Hopefully I chose the right player pool IDs. There we go. We are in. Look at that. Not a bad way to go. We've made it. People laugh, but last night that was not funny. I got very mad because I ran the same lineup in a lot of money. It's unfortunate. I did win $1,500 yesterday, so I got to look on the positive. And hat tip to our friend Greg Ehrenberg, who bought a house with his DFS winnings. If you guys aren't following him on Twitter, you should check it out. Looks like a nice place. All right. I didn't eat dinner yet. I'm thinking maybe a little pizza tonight. What do you got dialed up, Kyle?
Oh, I think I have some sushi actually left over, so I might have some sushi.
All right. Pizza, little taco meat sprinkled on top. That's what I'm going for. I got some extra salsa. It's going to be some good time in the EMac Casa. With that, gamers, you can follow Awesemo on Twitter at Awesemo_COM. You can follow Kyle at Kyle Tweets here, and I am at EMac DFS. With that, gamers, good luck.